Outer Orange.
Welcome back. I promised that I would do this deck profile, so we are here today to finally do this deck profile. This is no other than Zorga, specifically Blue Zorga, because that's actually what I've been mainly really enjoying in Overdress recently, and today we're going to be talking about that. But before that, in case you notice, there's something very beautiful aside from from Zorga himself, and that is the Night Rose playmat. This is a 0 damage exclusive playmat that was only around during a very specific time, and guess what? Right now, they're all back. All the legacy playmats are back for 0 damage. So go ahead and pick yourself one. You can use my code ORANGE to do that, and in case you're not feeling waifu, you also get these Zorga one as well. My camera's acting a little funky, so actually that's why I don't have it out like normally, but here it is. We talked about this playmat in the past when I first opened it and first got it. You guys remember, you guys seen this playmat before. It is absolutely amazing, and if you guys need cards, like I don't know, like Zorga or something, maybe Zorga cards or something like that, do not forget about 50cards.shop. Get yourself some cards that you may need for Overdress. Code ORANGE for that as well. Other than that, let's go back and talk about this. So we're going to talk about Zorga today. Now, most people play Red Zorga, but I've actually been recently enjoying Blue Zorga because there's certain orders that came out that just work better in blue than in doing red, mainly because of the Soul Blast cost issue. So we're going to go ahead and kind of go through. So red line, your starter can be whatever you want it to be, whatever you're in the mood for. It doesn't matter. You can you know, do the Flag Brick starter, do this starter, do the Zorga starter, whatever you're in the mood for. I like the cat because I think the cat's adorable. So we have Ranker Chain. You guys know Ranker Chain. This card is absolutely just amazing. Very good card, played in so many Magnolia decks, so many Stoichia decks because of just how good it is. There's just no reason not to play it. I forgot to talk about my deck boxes. Deck box is this. This is the Kobayashi deck box I'm currently using. Very, very cute, very adorable. I think Vice just dropped this. And then sleeves. So I'm using the Love is War sleeves for the Christmas themed ones. And then I'm using an old like Bermuda Triangle unit for my main sleeves. I don't know why, but I'm just doing it because why not? Anyway, sorry, I forgot about that part, but go back to this. So Ranker Chain says you, on Vanguard Circle, Soul Blast, drop 2 cards, discard order. Obviously in a deck that's focused on orders and the Rideland this is meant for, this is a very normal and very good skill to use, very utilized, and you can dish an order to then get it back with the Black Tears House Dragon. Black Tears House Dragon says when placed on Vanguard Circle, you just take a normal unit, specifically a normal order. You can take a normal order, bring back to your hand, so whatever you discard for this, hopefully it's a normal order, you can get back with this, or you know, you can discard a normal order for cost and ride this and get that same order back, whatever floats your boat. There are a couple options now. So at least we have Zorga. This is the Mysterious Rain Spiritualist Zorga. Now, as I mentioned before, I actually have it right here. A lot of people run the Red Zorga, this guy right here, as their main approach. I stopped, and the reason being is I currently found that in whatever meta you want to call it now, I find that the Blue Zorga is actually more useful than the Red Zorga. My biggest thing about Red Zorga that I don't like is the discard cost. I do agree that Alchemagicking is a lot easier, but this card cost can be very costly, and I'm just not a crazy fan of it. I've never really been a fan of Red Zorga as much as I've been a fan of Blue. However, Red is still a really good, still a really good approach. It's still a really good deck, but it is its own deck, and if there are certain orders it can't run that this deck can, but we'll talk about the orders in a little bit. Let's go ahead and talk about our 3s. Of course, we want Persona. That's probably, you know, your biggest thing, so you definitely want to see Persona. This is another Zorga, so we'll just put him, it's just more Zorga, so we'll put him right here. And then after that, we have the dragons. As you guys know, I love playing these dragons in any deck that isn't Zorga, but it's made for Zorga. So let's talk about the dragons. This is Roaming Prison Dragon. This is a 5k, but when it's called out through an order, you get one of the effects, which is 10k or crits, or if you Alchemagic, you get both skills. These always perform after you do full Alchemagic. And let me talk about Alchemagic real quick. I realized I kind of skipped over his skills. So Zorga has a couple skills. Zorga's first skill says you can just perform Alchemagic by taking 2 cards, one from hand, one from drop, and then binding the one from drop, and then you get both effects of the order. And then has a secondary skill that says Counterblast, and you just revive a card. That Counterblast revival will come super handy because you can actually bounce cards in deck. And right now in Zorga, you can actually do that bouncing more, because again, in Red Zorga, you don't have access to the soul as well as you do in Blue Zorga. In Blue Zorga, you can just go through your soul so much more because there's so much more recursion going on, so you can constantly keep playing defensively and be okay. Now, what does it matter for this? So for these cards in particular, you want to see these as early as possible. They're very aggro. You can early push on turn 2. These cards are actually just insanely nuts for what they are. They're a little fair because they're 5ks, but they're also very unfair when you're constantly applying pressure with crit triggers. So it's kind of like an up and down thing, but that's our dragons. Let's go over to the 2s. It's actually a very small amount of 2s. We're of course running Shadow Dog. Now, sorry, Shadow Cloak. This is Shadow Cloak right here. Now, something to keep in mind, so this card actually isn't as important in Red Zorga in my opinion. It's important, but I actually think in blue it's even more important because you can actually utilize both skills in blue, which is super big. So its first skill says when placed from hand, you can search your deck for any order as long as it's not in order of the same name and drop. So if you say, for example, if you have, I don't know, Soul Body Condensation in your drop, you cannot search for Soul Body Condensation to then mill it and drop, but you can search for other orders and you can mill it and you'll just have a order and drop. Second skill is super important. This is important. It says when you play an order, you can Soul Blast. This unit gets 5k, and then if you perform Alchemy Magic, you can bounce a card that's not itself back to hand. So you can choose one of your other rear guards to bounce it. That includes anything. It's just rear guard. It doesn't say what kind of rear guards. That includes personas. It includes PGs, triggers, anything you need. You can bounce it back to hand. Now, something important to keep in mind. Zorga's skill lets you revive a card, and then this card says bounce it back, essentially. So what you want to do is you can early Perfect Guard, and you can use his skill to revive the Perfect Guard, and then you can use his skill to then bring it back to hand. Just a very versatile skill. It does require soul, but again, because we're playing Blue Zorga, we don't really care. So the soul is not a problem, and we'll talk about more kind of about soul and how you can keep replenishing your soul and all that kind of stuff. I will say one thing, Prison is still a very tough deck, so you have to be very cautious of that. But let's talk about the spicy tech I put in here. So we're going to talk about these two cards, these two mystery cards right here. This is the Delicate Beauty Maiden Candelria. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that name. This is the new promo that just dropped very recently, actually. So I started testing with her very recently, and by very recently I mean in the last like 24-ish hour period, and I absolutely love this card. What does she do? She says at the end of turn, retire this unit and call up to 2 plant tokens. Now, why does this matter? So something that's kind of annoying or frustrating or kind of hard to play with a lot is with the dragons is that once you call them out, next turn they lose crit and they lose the 10k power, so they become 5k vanillas. That is a problem because you constantly want to keep calling them out. And early on, you kind of want, there's a couple cards that retire here, so you want ways to retire stuff to then bring other stuff back. Being able to call 2 tokens out means you can do that. So you essentially can draw a bunch of cards, and you can kind of set up, you can make the tokens into boosters behind the dragons, and you kind of just have those versatileness that goes on. There's a lot of cards that say retire 2 to then draw some cards, and this lets you early on get those 2 cards because you won't always have your dragons ASAP. So these cards help with that. I used to run this at 3. I actually cut her back to 2. Another thing that's cool with her is I could swing with her, and then she replenishes herself with 2 whole tokens. Like, that's pretty wild. And by the way, you don't have to do the effect. She can just be at 10k vanilla. Into Prison, this is really good. You can call 2 of these out and then get 4 tokens out, and they don't really have anything to imprison anymore. So there's just some funny stuff. And in case you need to know what the plant tokens look like, they look like this. I think you can run the V ones too. It doesn't really matter as long as they have the 5k skill on them. These are the ones from D specifically. So yeah, you can run these, you know, whatever you want to do. Those are the 5k tokens. So while testing, there's actually one more interaction I forgot to tell you guys about when it involves the token girl. So what you can do is you can set up your whole turn, your whole Alchemy Magic turn, get your dragons out. Say next turn you can't find a copy of this, you can't find Sticky in time, or maybe Sticky is too costly. There's actually one more way you can get the dragons into drop and keep them safe from your opponent really touching them, including Ava, which can bind them. You can actually, so you can swing with them, you can revive 1 token girl to the board. Just 1, you don't need any more. And then at the end of turn, you can use her skill to retire her and call 2 tokens over your dragons, and you can do something like that. So now what happens is you just set up your dragons for next turn and deny your opponent from touching them at all. So for example, Prison, if they want to try and touch them, you can just make them evaporate. They're in the front row, which is really funny because they don't really do much for you. Like, they don't really do much for your opponent, ideally. Like, they can, like, the only thing they can really do is swing into these. Then the other thing that's really nice is that next turn, when you do reset back up, say you do have a Sticky in hand, you can then call a Sticky out and then sack these 2 and then draw a card, and then you'll still have the setup for the dragons as well, which is actually pretty nuts. But this is actually one interaction I forgot to mention. It's very important, actually really helps. Again, to Prison or even Ava. Ava can only bind from the board, right? So when Ava binds your dragons, you lose them. However, since they're gone because you used the token girl and now they're binding, you know, something else, they might bind something back here, but you don't really care about that. That's really good. Now, last but not least, this is kind of an important one, and that's actually Youthberg. So Youthberg will try and bottom deck your dragons. They have a bunch of grade 3s, so they'll definitely try to prioritize the dragons. However, if you call the tokens out, now they will not be bottom decking your dragons anymore. Your bottom dragons will safely stay. Your dragons will safely stay here, and you have no concern because they're in your drop, and you recall them out. And by the way, you can keep cycling this over and over again. You can just keep constantly reviving this token girl. So as long as you find one copy, you can do this over and over and over again, and there's really nothing your opponent can do to stop that. So I wanted to mention this because I actually think this is super important into upcoming meta. You know, whatever you see in the future, as a Zorka player, this is super big. I think being able to deny your opponent from touching your dragons or whatever is actually really good, and these tokens evaporate anyway, so you just don't really care, and then Sticky just kind of finishes it. So something to keep in mind. And almost time to make a whole video about Token Girl, just because Token Girl is just so good. And by the way, Token Girls, this is the card I'm talking about. It's a promo. Pick it up. Doesn't matter what format, both for premium and for D, this is an insanely good card. So that's our grade 2. This is kind of the spice. Like I said, you can tech this in for other stuff if you want. You can run more grade 1s, you know, whatever your choice is. But I really like them. I think they're really useful. They came pretty in handy. Let's talk about our grade 1s. They're actually pretty small. And by the way, we'll talk into orders real quick here. So first I run 2 Sticky. So this is NTCS Sticky. This is one of the beginning of the retire cards, so this makes this more free. So her skill says Counterblast, you retire 2 rear guards, draw a card, she gets 5k. So essentially what you can do is on turn 2 you call this out, get the 2 tokens, and then turn 3, like your Vanguard turn, you call this out, and then you sack the tokens and you just straight up draw a card for literally doing basically nothing. So that's really nice. Or you can retire these. Whatever this situation will be different from game to game. So, you know, it kind of just depends. You only have 5 circles to work with, so it kind of rough sometimes because sometimes you want certain stuff on the board like the dog, because you want the dog to bounce stuff back. You have to set up a certain way. But that's that. And then next I run 2 perfect guards. 2 regular perfect guards. Keep in mind we do have the Blitz order, of course. So the Blitz order will be the 3rd perfect guard. You might ask yourself, well, why are you running 3 perfect guards? One can be directly searched with the dog, and you can bounce it back to hand. So but through your drop zone specifically. So it's really not a big deal to run 3. If you want to run 4, that's perfectly fine. You could probably cut back this or something else. I don't know. You could cut back somewhere for it. You could probably cut back in order to have the 4 perfect guards. I'm ballsy. I've been playing Zorka with 3 PGs for a while now. Funnily enough, I usually find a perfect guard. As funny as it sounds, my hand is still somehow cluttered with perfect guards. I don't know why. It just keeps happening. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing something wrong. But the reason why I cut back is because the deck is always really tight. You always need to cut back somewhere. It's usually on Persona. I choose to cut back on 1 PG because they're directly searchable, and in this deck specifically you can also bounce them. So because you can bounce them on top of the fact that you can search them, I really actually currently don't see a reason to run 4. I think it's the easiest place to cut back now. In the past it was a little bit harder. You have to draw a little bit more. This deck draws really fast, and you'll actually, like I said, you can directly search for it with the dog, and then you can bring it back to hand, which by the way, something PLAYMAT pretty much told me. First I was kind of against it, and then the more I started thinking about it, I was like, oh, I can actually like lower on perfect guards for it since this directly searches for them, and then you can get back to hand. We'll talk about how you can get back to hand with specifically the Blitz order. Long story short, if you want to run 4, by all means do. I actually don't think you need to anymore. Your only fear is really Gravidia, and I'm telling you, if you open this, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. So I'm running 2 Miasma right now. It's a new grade 3, came out in the Festival Collection. It's a pretty good card in either deck, red or blue. This says Counterblast. You choose a grade 3 or less, call it to the board, and then if you perform this through Alchemy Magic, you choose your Vanguard, and it gets all your front row gets 5k. So all your front units just get a bit of power. Very beefy. I think the recall is actually really nice. This card can be a hit or miss sometimes. I sometimes wonder if this is worse or better than this card in particular is better than GDR or not. This is GDR right here. I run 1 copy right now, and I just don't know. The timing can just be so weird. So GDR just says give 3 units 10k, which can be a hit or miss sometimes. It's pretty much Persona. Whereas this card just gives a passive 5k, so no matter what you do to your board, you'll just have the passive 5k. It's very harmless, and I really like the revive. Whereas this doesn't have a revive, it's just raw power, and if you miss Persona, I guess it's good. But I'm kind of weird about GDR right now. I just can't tell. I am running one of these. This is the Walls Melt and the Sound of Rain. It looks like this. Another reason I'm running this is because I have a lot of I currently have a lot of like orders that just have costs on them, and I just love having like 1 card that's costless because at least I can do something in case I get denied damage or whatever, or you know, just not some weird situations. This also pops something which can be very useful. Sometimes there's just rear guards that you kind of don't want there, like because of certain conditions that your opponent tries to do. This allows you to kind of play around that a little bit. It does force your opponent to choose, so they will choose what they call, but then whatever you call out, you can then bounce back to hand in case you do want to avoid using Zorka's skill because it's a counterblast. So it's kind of a win-win for you. You don't really care. And if they only have like 1 thing on the board, you could pop that 1 thing. Like, so a good example is Flagbrig. They'll usually have an Sense Assault on the board. You could pop the Sense Assault and get yourself a 2. So you can call it the dog, you know, do whatever. You can just kind of roll with it. So I think mainly just this is really good for that, the fact that it's free. I like the freeness behind this. If you're facing decks like I don't know, like Graffiti or something, and pop their 3, call your 3 out, like it could be Zorga, and then you can bounce that card back to hand. You know, you can do like some funny stuff with it. Not the best card in the world. If you want to replace this, I used to run 3 Miasma and I didn't run this at all, so you can replace that there. The grade 2 orders are very small. It's just Tearful Malice. This is the other retire to rearguard. This is another card that you can use for the tokens. So this says just play it by retiring to rearguard to draw a card, put her into soul, put this into soul, and you counter charge. The counter charge is very important, especially in this deck. This deck is very counter boss heavy. I also noticed as I was kind of like cycling through my orders, notice there's a lot of blue. Then it's funny because I'm playing blue Zorka. But anyway, so this is really important because it pops your dragons, it draws you cards, it reflects your soul, and you counter charge. So it's just an all-in-one card. It's really good. I run it at 2 because anytime I have it at 1, I just never see it, and there's definitely games where you just mandatorily have to see this. It's very important, so we run it. It kind of sucks. Alchemagicking this is not usually the best feeling. That's actually why Sticky comes in handy, because if you use Sticky, then you can avoid using this, but the counter charges are so versatile, it's just important. So just something to keep in mind. Now after that, we're going to the ones now, so we'll go ahead and get started with the new order. This is, gosh, In the Dim Darkness, the Frozen Resentment, with these names, man. So this is the new order that dropped set 6. I believe it's set 6 because that's when the frame rate started. So this is the new one. This is a very, very good card. This is actually one of the reasons why I'm playing Blue Zorgo over Red right now, because you can't play this in Red. You can maybe play, can maybe play 1 cop. It's just too heavy on soul, because that deck goes through soul like crazy fast. It says when played, you'll get top 3 cards discard 1 call card that's, you know, less than or greater or equal to your Vanguard. So essentially you can call dragons. You can call this out early, the grade 1, and make it a booster, and then you can, since you play an order, you can call the dragons out, and then at turn 3, you know, you can call, like, again, anything you want. Mainly the deck thin is just so big, the deck thin is just so huge, you can call whatever. Very, very good card. The 5k power just doesn't matter. Like, if you compare this to Soul Body Conversation, this deck doesn't matter, your numbers are gonna get big anyway. So this is just overall a good card, and like I said, I do run 3 copies of this card because I just think it's so good. I'm almost tempted to put it to 4. I don't know where to cut back though. Maybe cut back one of these and make it this. I don't know, because seeing this card early is just so good that every game I saw this, I just had a great time. The games I didn't see this, I had a bad time. So I think this card might be mandatory, and the fact that this can find you a dragon is just really huge. This card plays a huge role in Flagberg too, because you can find your pieces faster. In this deck, it's a little piece reliance, you kind of want it to. So let's go into the next new card. I believe these came out too in this upcoming set. I could just read it. It says BTO6. So this is Sweets That Became an Evil Dream. Run 2 copies right now. This card's pretty interesting. It's not like a game changer, but it's a good, like, 1 of 2 of type of card. It says play this with a Counter Blast, draw a card, look at top card of your deck, and you can leave it on top or you can discard it. Now, this is huge. It lets you go 1 card deeper. Well, technically 2. You draw 1, then you go 1 card deeper. What's nice about this is that you can set up your top card, or if you see on top like an order or you see a dragon, you can just discard that. It's going to be useless anyway. You don't want neither of those cards in your drive check. So that's what this card is for. The Overcoming the Unnatural Death. So this is the card that lets you get your Blitz order back to hand, which is the Elementria Sanctitude. So essentially what you can do is, if you have this in hand, this in deck, or, you know, you could also discard it, it's up to you. What you do is you use Shadow Cloak, you search for this, and then you play this card, and then this card just says Counterblast 1, bind this card, choose 2 orders from your drop, and put it to your hand. So essentially what you can do, and by the way, we used to be able to do this with Ghost Chase too. So you bind this, you pick up this, and you pick up 1 of your orders, and now you have more setup and more stuff, and it's just great. Like, ideally, it just gets you a free PG to hand, and that's actually why I cut back on a perfect guard. So I like it. So this is my current order line up here. I'm running 13, which I agree is a little heavy. I want to cut back somewhere. Ideally, I want to drop 1 of these, and I'm probably going to drop 1 of these. 1 of these will turn into the grade 1 probably, and 1 of these will probably turn into a unit. Triggers, we run obviously 4 heals. So there's the 4 heals. We're running over trigger. It's a 5th heal in this, specifically in Stoicheia Nations. We run 4 crits, so I'm running 3 octopus crit and 1 of the furry crit because he's just, the flowers are just so pretty. But we can't forget about Best Boy though. This is Best Boy right here. Can't forget about the homie here. So we got the homie and we got the other homie. We got both homies. And then we got homie girl over here. And we got Alana. So Alana is very important. Remember I was talking about earlier about how you can recursion your soul. This is how you do it. She goes into soul to get something 2k. The 2k really doesn't matter. It's literally the most garbage thing ever. However, what does matter is the fact that this goes into soul. So you can keep reviving her with like Zorga skill and then put her into soul and then soul blast her out and then put her back into soul and then soul blast her out. So ideally you're never running out of soul as quickly quickly as, you know, like as you want to. So you can go through your soul pretty nicely. Like you can be kind of like harsh with your soul and not really fear the fact that you're gonna run out of soul just because this card exists. So that's the main condition of that. The 2k is like very whatever. I remember I had one game where I just kept spamming this over and over again. I just kept reviving and calling, reviving and calling, reviving. It was great. It was a great time. And then last but not least, I do run 3 draws. Now, and this is the ones that gives you the extra shield, by the way. So some run fronts in this slot, and they go for the 8 crit. I prefer the draws. I don't know, maybe Flagberg just spoiled me or something in a bad way. I don't know. Ever since I started running draws, I just can't go back to fronts. The fronts are nice, they make the dragons bigger, but the draws are just so freaking important. Drawing an extra card in D is like actually just nuts sometimes. Like, getting that defensive draw can go from a losing situation to a winning situation so fast. It's actually kind of nuts. Like, I really could not explain to you why in D specifically draws feel so much nicer. Draws have been feeling so nice in D that I've been at a weird point where I start throwing them into V premium and I hate it. But anyway, aside from that, so why run the draws over the fronts? It's just pieces. Any deck that requires pieces, just seeing the draws is so nice. This is defensively and offensively just a really good trigger. It's better in D because these are 10Ks and not 5Ks, and that's actually part of the reason why I do run them. If it wasn't for that, I'd probably stick to the fronts. But the fact that they're 10K shields is also just super big in a deck like, just in a D deck. They're just nice. It's just nice to have, so I run them. You can run the fronts. They add for more pressure early on to late game, especially if you try to push your opponent early on. But I found that the draws are not that different. The other thing is, in case you have to pitch them and you draw into them, just pitch them. And there's still better pitches than dropping your 15Ks, so I just think these are the better cards. Now let's go ahead and quickly talk about why I'm not running counter heals. So personally, currently, and this is like a big meta call, right now I haven't really, funnily enough, actually, so I played locals today and I actually saw a lot of crit decks, but funnily enough, the last couple times I've been playing, I haven't been seeing crit decks, and of course the one time that I choose to go back to the vanillas, I see Gravidia and Prison and just all these decks that game, freaking Zorga, all this other stuff, right? But you know, but regardless, so the reason why I'm doing this is because Gravidia is a little out of meta. No one's really playing Barra Magnus. The only other deck is like PBO, and I think might be missing a Prison. Prison gains crits too, but all those decks aren't really played as much right now because we're going into this meta of like Youthberg and Thagria, whatever. Well, not Thagria. It's mainly like Youthberg and lyrical decks and like Nirvana and all this other stuff, right? So honestly, into those matchups, the counter heals just don't really do that much. So I just found that this is just a better approach. But, you know, you could still see Gravidia because Gravidia is still kind of an annoying deck sometimes. I feel like people have just mastered the Gravidia matchup at this point to where I feel like people just either got bored or they just got tired of taking it, or maybe people just found the deck isn't that oppressive as much. I don't really know. I say that as I got OT today, but I also misplayed. I like forgot about my resources and how they work for a second. It costed me the game, so I don't know if the OT would have mattered there. But OT is really the biggest game changer in Gravidia, and sometimes just, I don't know, triggers, you don't hit triggers and the deck kind of falls apart. But anyway, long story short, I don't feel like you need the counter heals, but it depends on where you're playing, what your locals people are playing, what's in meta, what's on meta. I feel like right now these are fine. You could go the 2-2 split, 2 counter heals, specifically the crit one, and then have the 2 regular ones. Up to you. I kind of value the 15k shield. It's been really nice. I went back to it and it's just been so nice just blocking like 40k rear guards and all that kind of stuff. But you really don't have much else aside from like maybe showing you guys some early pressure that you can do. So if you early like see your dragons, you can do something like this, and then because you use that one card, you'll have something like this. And then sometimes, and somehow this did happen, I really couldn't tell you why because I don't run that many of these, but then but then you can also like call out a board like this, and this board is kind of nutty because these will have the 10Ks on them, this will have 2K on it, and this will just be a vanilla. You swing for 10, this will be swinging for like 23, and then this will be swinging for 25. It's a very good early rush, and you can push your opponent to 5 damage very quickly this way. Next turn, right up to Zorga, do your normal Alchemagic thing and just keep applying pressure, and you'll usually win the game. I had 2 games today where I pretty much did that, and it straight up won me the game. And I wasn't really doing too much. Like, and by the way, it's just this order is just that clean. This order has fixed some of my dragon problems. You know, I don't have a dragon. Oh no, what do? Oh, I use this skill. Oh look, a dragon, crazy, and then I just ditch it, and then I call out this card, and then I call my dragon out. It's just very nice. So overall, it's just really good. The card just uses so much, and you don't need the power on it. Like Soul by Condensation gave you power, but Soul by Condensation did not let you dig through your deck as fast. This doesn't have the power, but Soul by Condensation doesn't have a way to deck through, and you don't want to call triggers or like other stuff, right? You want to call dragons. So pretty good stuff. So you can run Token Girl. You can kind of do the same thing that I just showed you, but with Token Girl instead. So you can literally do the exact same play. The difference is in case you have one dragon, don't have two, that's fine. Swing with this, swing with this, swing with this, retire her ability, and then call yourself, at the end of turn this happens, by the way, and then call yourself 2 tokens. And then, this is the greatest part, when you ride up to your Zorga next turn, when you go to Zorga, and you can use this effect Counterblast, just stack these 2, draw a card. It's just free, it's very free, and you just drew yourself a free card. Or if you don't want to use her skill, if in case you don't have the CB for it, you can of course always use Malice's skill and do the exact same thing. Or if you really want, you can even keep the token in the back row. You can keep the token in the back row, and instead what you can do is you can stack these 2, you can stack the front row instead. So you can just drop these 2 with the Malice order or the sticky, whichever you prefer, and then that way you get your dragons back, you draw a card, and you really didn't lose any resources. So kind of up to you how you want to set up there, and then, you know, after that you can go double dragon. Sorry, Sticky's still here, and you have like a really full board setup. And the greatest part about this is that this is already hitting for a magic number. And then say if you use Miasma as your other order, the other has at 5k, now it's 23. Under Persona, this is 28 and then 38, you know, just all this funny stuff that you can do. So it's just a really good setup, and no one's really ever going to touch these, they don't really care. And then their other options aren't really too great either if they want to retire stuff. They're not going to touch the dragons, obviously, but it's okay, you'll just touch the dragons. And that concludes my current Zorga deck profile. As I mentioned, even me, changed this deck a lot, so even myself, I'm like, maybe I could change that, maybe I could change this, but you know, you do you. Zorga is just amazing. If you want to run red instead, you can run red, run the other orders, you know, do whatever you want. Zorga is just so versatile, but I'm showing you kind of my style. I don't think a lot of people are trying the token route, aside from like the grade 1 and the grade 2. There's 2 other token generator cards. There's a grade 1 that lets you get one for free if you're on grade 3, and there's another one that just says Counterblast, get a token, but she's a 9k. And they're not bad. I like the 10ks more. I know it sounds crazy, but 10k hits, a 9k doesn't. And yes, you can boost, but it's still 14, so it's kind of awkward. And then the grade 1's kind of okay, but I'm not crazy about her because she has a restriction. One thing I like about this token girl is that she doesn't really have a restriction. You just kind of do her skill, so that's why I've been running her. I've thought about running the Roroa engine, but I just haven't decided. I don't think I'm gonna do that, but it just sounds fun. I've run the Roroa engine in the past, and I didn't really like it. There's one more card I do want to briefly bring up before I officially conclude this, and that's actually this card right here. If you ever feel like you're constantly in a situation where you're just never seeing dragons, this is a straight up 5 mil. It's an on hit, but you'll hit. And this is just a really funny way to just set up your drop zone really, really fast, but here pull a deck out. But the only thing that sucks better, you have to run her at like more than 1 copy, and after 1 you don't really want to see anymore, and yeah, you're forced to kind of run 4 just to see her. But other than that, that's my deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know what you're doing and what your kind of style is right now with Zorga. Are you running red? Are you running blue? What are you doing? I know there's been some red Zorgas that have been winning recently, you know, but blue's coming back actually, so you know, meta does shift, and as meta shifts, so will Zorga. Zorga is a control deck. Zorga has always been a control deck, and Zorga has always been a meta shifting deck, just like Grand Blue. So Grand Blue for V. So that being said, you always have options, you always have things you can do, but let me know your thoughts below, all that kind of fun stuff. Other than that, guys, I'm gonna stop talking about Zorga because I'm just gonna keep going and going and going. This is still probably my favorite D deck in all of D, even though I've had so much fun and I've topped with other decks and I've just had a great time. This is still my favorite deck on the whole planet. It's still the most prettiest deck. It's still just freaking amazing. It just, sadly to me, it always feels a little behind sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. But I've been having a great time with it recently. I'm probably going to keep playing it for a little bit. Hope you guys enjoy my deck profile. Catch you guys in a future video. On that, guys, peace out. Das Vidania. I'll see you guys in whatever it is I'm doing next. Thank you for all the love and support. I've been reading the comments. I really appreciate it. Keep doing that. I love it. So, yeah. Bye, guys. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. See you somewhere else. Bye.